One of the greatest financial opportunities in 2025 for most people lies within their home equity. And I wanted to shed some light on this topic in this video to go over ways to build wealth, save money, and just talk about overall financial well being. And I see so many people missing the opportunity of how to use home equity and creatively and safely use the leverage to help better their situation and gain financial security. So I want to shed some light. I titled this Use Home Equity to Build Wealth. And I titled that because there's a lot of ways to use equity in homes to create and generate long-term financial wealth. And so the problem we face right now is debt in our country, right? It's an ever-growing thing. And I put this chart on the screen. This is from the Federal Reserve. This is total debt balance in America. It shows it down to non-housing debt and housing debt. If you really dial that in, there's actually $1.18 trillion in U.S. credit card debt in 2025, slightly down a little bit from Q4 of last year, but overall we're at all-time highs with credit card debt in America, right? And we're at all-time high total debt in America. And the reality is it's going to continue higher at the current pace we're going right now. I don't see that slowing down, but I do see an opportunity to help, because on the other side is the opportunity that's at hand right now, which is 2/3 of Americans have paid off their mortgage, so they own their home free and clear, or they at least have 50% equity in their property. And that's a pretty crazy stat, because when you really look at it, that means 68% of people, which is 2/3 of US households, own their home free and clear, or at least have 50%, so 50% equity in their home. And so we have a very house rich economy, but we also still have rising debt load, right? And so there's opportunity when it comes down to this, right? And so there's 4 ways, there's more ways in this, but to keep this video concise, there's 4 ways that you can use home equity to create and build wealth. Number one is you can use your equity to purchase more real estate, right? Whether that's single family home, maybe it's a move up strategy, or maybe it's you're buying a rental property fully for investment or Airbnb or VRBO purposes. Maybe it's multifamily, duplex, triplex, fourplex, 8-unit properties to generate cash flow. Maybe it's commercial properties, retail space, office space, things like that. And the thing is that you can use your equity in real estate in your primary home or residential properties to extract capital to buy other properties on a tax-free basis. The other thing is a lot of people don't realize that you can also use money to start a business or invest in businesses. And this is something that's overlooked, but if you have a really great idea, or you know somebody that has a great idea and needs help with funding, using equity from your home to funnel into a business opportunity, a lot of times can generate much higher rates of return than the interest you would borrow at. Third thing, and we're dealing with this a lot with clients, and you're not alone if you're dealing with this, but consolidating higher interest debt. I showed you that chart. We have $1.18 trillion of credit card debt right now in America, and it's going up. Utilizing home equity line of credit, or the term HELOC, or cash out refinances to use equity in your current home, consolidate higher interest debt, higher payment debt into lower payment. I'm going to show you a real life example of that. And then number 4, and this is something that's always missed, but I find it something I want to talk about, is increasing tax breaks, right? So with rental real estate, investment property real estate, for example, you can write off 100% of the interest on a mortgage on your tax returns to help offset the rental income, and it also helps with tax breaks. We're not going to go into super detail on that. You definitely want to consult with your CPA to go over that further, but on a high level, you can use rental real estate as a tax break and use the mortgage as an additional write-off. So here's a topic, and I ask this to every client when I go on the meetings with them and we have our consultations, but do you ever know the 2 different types of financial interest? And 7 out of 10 people actually don't know how to answer this question, but there's 2 types of interest. There's simple interest and compound interest. And you're probably like, oh yeah, I've heard of those. Well, if we really go into this, right, let's just take an example, right? A $500,000 mortgage at a 7% mortgage rate on the left-hand side over here. And then we have on the right side a $500,000 home. Let's just say it's a single family home. And that home appreciates 4% each year, which is the 100-year average in America. And let's say that goes up 4% each year for 30 years, right? So if we do the math, a $500,000 mortgage at a 7% interest rate, assuming we don't sell, we don't refinance, would pay almost $700,000 of interest over the life of the loan, which is quite a bit of interest. But on the flip side, compounding interest grows each year and it compounds on one another, right? So a $500,000 home going up just 4% per year would actually generate a property value of $1.6 million in 30 years. And so if you look at the spread and the difference, 500K loan, 700K of interest, that's $1.2 million of cost. The home actually appreciated up to 1.6. So even with a lower appreciation rate, you still made more than the higher interest rate. And that's assuming you don't even refinance or sell. So the point I'm trying to get at is that a mortgage can truly help people in that compounding interest that let property values grow at a higher pace than the interest paid over time. Let's break this down into a real life example, right? On the left-hand column, we've got an all-cash buyer, somebody that buys a $500,000 property. They put down a $500,000, they just buy it outright in cash, right? So they spend about $507 with closing costs. Door number 2 is columns 2 and 3. We have another buyer that puts 50% down on two $500,000 properties, right? So you're putting $250,000 down on each property, borrowing at a 6.75 at the time I record this, average 30-year fixed mortgage roughly, and you're borrowing about $1,600 a month, right? Well, if we fast forward and we go into this, let's look at the net worth over 30 years. In the long run, we have buyer number 1 has a $1.6 million home. It was paid free and clear up front. Yes, they had a little bit higher cash flow, and we'll talk about that in a second. But buyer number 2 has two $500,000 homes at 1.6. So the buyer number 2 actually gets ahead and has two assets totaling 3.2 million versus buyer number 1 has a 1.6 million. And that's just assuming a 4% appreciation rate like we talked about, which is the 100-year average in America. Now, let's look at this on the other side, right? The contradicting side of this. We have interest over 30 years, right? So the total interest you'd pay on a $250,000 loan without refinancing would be $334,000 of interest. And that's the negative side of taking the debt out, right? But at the other end, 100% of that $334,000, let's say a tenant's paying the mortgage, right? They're paying rent to the landlord, which could be you. All of that $334,000 of interest would have been tax breaks along the way. You'd been able to write that off on your taxes each year as time progressed, utilize that to your advantage. And it's just something to think about when you're going into this, right? You may have less cash flow up front, but you have that tax break and you're able to get two properties instead of one. The other scenario I wanted to leave this video off on is more of a debt consolidation. So on the other side, maybe you own a home right now, maybe you have some debts, but you have some equity, right? So this is a real life example on the left-hand column for a client that we helped, $75,000 personal loan before we did a home equity line of credit. That personal loan was costing them $1,900 per month. A $54,000 credit card debt at costing $1,200 a month just in minimum monthly payments. $44,000 auto loan costing $970 a month. So that totaled $173,000 of debt, costing this client over $4,000 a month in minimum payments just to the bank. After we did a home equity line of credit, we did end up doing a $175,000 home equity line of credit. The client's new household payment, new monthly payment on that HELOC is only $1,300 a month. So they actually saved over $2,700 per month just with a debt consolidation path, right? And now that client can take that $2,700, attack that HELOC quicker, or perhaps it's take $2,700 and invest it in other assets that'll generate higher returns than the HELOC. And so again, this is just ideas. I wanted to plant the seed in your head right now to see, what are the opportunities at stake here? How can you use leverage, and how can you use your current home equity to help you get ahead further? So many people, they just pay a mortgage down. They have this equity going over their entire life, and they never use that equity to produce greater returns, and they never thought creatively. And so everybody has their own financial fingerprint, their own situation. This video isn't a one-size-fits-all, but at least I just wanted to plant some seeds to help you get that process in your head started. But feel free to reach out to myself and our team. We'd be happy to help you with a one-on-one custom plan to go through your personal financial situation. Hope you have a great day.